The last time you got sick, you did something no other animal on Earth would do. You told someone. You sent a message. You called out. You let another person know that you were hurting. And that small act, so ordinary you didn't even notice it, is one of the oldest and strangest things about being human. Because for almost every other creature alive, getting sick means one thing: you hide it or you die. But your ancestors did something different, and what they did changes everything we think we know about who we are. Start with a simple fact about the natural world. In the wild, weakness is fatal. A limping gazelle is the one the lions take. A sick wolf falls behind the pack and is left behind. Most animals instinctively hide their illness because to show it is to invite death. So when scientists started digging up the bones of ancient humans, they expected to find the same story: injury, then a quick end. What they found instead was almost impossible to believe. In the 1950s, an archaeologist named Ralph Selecki was excavating a cave in the mountains of northern Iraq. The place was called Shanidar. Deep in the dirt, he uncovered the skeletons of Neanderthals, the ancient cousins of modern humans who lived tens of thousands of years ago. One of them, a male Selecki nicknamed Nandi, told a story nobody was prepared for. This man had been wrecked. His skull showed a massive blow to the left side of his face, an injury that almost certainly left him blind in one eye. His right arm was withered and useless, possibly amputated at the elbow. He had a deformed foot, signs of a broken leg that had healed, and he was likely deaf. By every rule of the wild, this man should have died young, alone, and fast. But he didn't. He lived into his 40s, which for a Neanderthal was old age. Here is the question that haunted Selecki, and it should haunt you too. How does a half-blind, one-armed, partially deaf man survive for decades in the Ice Age? The answer is the part that changes everything. He survived because other people kept him alive. Someone brought him food he could not hunt for himself. Someone protected him when he could not defend his own body. Someone stayed. A blind, crippled man in a brutal world is not a survivor. He is a burden. And his people carried that burden for years, for no reason except that he was one of them. This is not a soft interpretation invented by hopeful scientists. It is written directly into his bones. Healed injuries are proof of survival, and survival like his is impossible without care. And Nandi is not alone. Across the world, in grave after grave, the same story keeps surfacing. In Vietnam, at a site called Man Bach, archaeologist Lorna Tilley studied the skeleton of a young man who had been completely paralyzed from the waist down, with almost no use of his arms. He was a quadriplegic in a world with no wheelchairs, no medicine, no hospitals. He could not feed himself. He could not clean himself. He could not move. And yet the bones show he lived this way for roughly 10 years. Think about what that actually means. For a decade, someone fed him every meal. Someone turned his body to stop the sores that would otherwise have killed him in weeks. Someone carried him, cleaned him, and kept him from infection in an age before anyone understood what infection even was. Tilley built an entire field of study around cases like this. She called it the bioarchaeology of care. The idea is simple and profound. When you find a person who survived an injury they could not have survived alone, you are not just looking at a skeleton. You are looking at the fingerprints of everyone who loved them. So your ancestors didn't abandon the sick. They carried them. But did they actually try to heal them, or did they just wait and hope? For a long time, scientists assumed ancient people were helpless against disease. They were wrong about that too. In a cave in Spain called El Cedrón, researchers found the remains of Neanderthals who died around 50,000 years ago. Trapped in the hardened plaque on their teeth, the dental calculus that fossilizes over a lifetime was a chemical record of everything they had put in their mouths. One of these individuals was sick. His teeth showed signs of a dental abscess, and his gut, traced through the same plaque, carried a stomach bug that would have left him in real pain. And here's what the scientists found locked in his teeth. He had been eating poplar. Poplar bark and leaves contain salicylic acid. That is the active ingredient in aspirin. A Neanderthal in agony, 50,000 years before a chemist ever bottled a painkiller, was chewing on the one tree in his forest that happened to contain one. And that was not all. His plaque also held traces of penicillium, the mold that we would eventually turn into penicillin, the first antibiotic. Now, nobody is claiming this man understood chemistry. He didn't know what salicylic acid was, but somewhere in the accumulated knowledge of his people, passed down through countless sick days and careful observations, was the understanding that this bark eases pain and that mold helps a wound. That is medicine. Crude, unexplained, but real. The researcher Karen Hardy, who studied these remains, argued that this points to something we rarely give ancient humans credit for. A deep, working knowledge of the plants around them. Not magic, not luck. A pharmacy hidden in the landscape, memorized over generations and handed down like an inheritance. Doesn't it change how you picture them, knowing they were searching for cures? And it goes deeper than plants. Some of the most disturbing evidence of ancient medicine is written into the human skull itself. Across Europe, Africa, and South America, archaeologists keep finding ancient skulls with holes drilled into them. Neat, deliberate holes, scraped or cut through the bone while the person was still alive. This is called trepanation, and it is one of the oldest surgeries we know of, performed thousands of years before anyone wrote a single word. At first it sounds like torture, but here's the detail that stops you cold. In many of these skulls, the bone around the hole has healed. New growth, smooth edges, the unmistakable sign that the patient survived the operation and lived on for years afterward. Some skulls show 2, 3, even more holes, each one healed, meaning the same person went under the knife again and again and kept surviving. Someone was performing brain surgery in the Stone Age, and their patients were walking away alive. We still don't fully know why they did it. Maybe to relieve pressure from a head injury, maybe to treat seizures or crushing pain. But whatever the reason, it tells you something undeniable. Your ancestors did not simply accept suffering. They tried to fix it, even when fixing it meant opening up a human skull with a sharpened stone. So let's put the whole picture together, because it points somewhere unexpected. The sick were fed, the crippled were carried, the injured were healed with plants that genuinely worked, and the desperate were operated on by hands that, against all odds, sometimes saved them. This is not the brutal, every creature for itself prehistory we imagine. It is something far more tender and far more strange. The question is why? Why would a struggling group of humans, fighting for every calorie in a freezing world, spend years keeping alive the people who could give nothing back? This is where the story turns, and where it stops being about the past at all. Because the most likely answer is that caring for the sick is not a side effect of being human. It may be the very thing that made us human in the first place. A species that abandons its weak stays small, scattered, and forgettable. But a species that protects its weak builds something else entirely. It builds trust. It builds the knowledge that if you fall, you will be caught. And that knowledge lets people take risks, share freely, and bind themselves into groups far larger and stronger than any pack of animals. The decision to carry Nandi was not weakness. It was the foundation of everything we would ever become. And that ancient program is still running inside you right now. You feel it every time you bring soup to someone who is sick. You feel it when you sit in a hospital waiting room for hours for news about someone you love. You feel it in the strange, powerful pull to take care of a person who cannot, in that moment, take care of you. That pull is not modern. It is not taught. It is tens of thousands of years old, carried in your bones the way it was carried in Nandi's. When you stay by a sick person's side, you are doing the exact thing your ancestors did in a cave in Iraq 50,000 years ago. So the next time you get sick and you reach for your phone to tell someone, stop for just a moment and notice what you are really doing. You are not just asking for help. You are performing the oldest human act there is, the one that separated us from every other animal that ever lived. You are trusting that you will be cared for. And somewhere deep in the long memory of your species, that trust has always been answered. The last time you got sick, you told someone. And in that one small act, you reached back across 50,000 years and took the hand of every ancestor who refused to let the sick die alone.